Okay. So we do intro, banter,
Prayer intro.
intro, prayer? Intro, prayer, intro.
I think this is just showing how long it's been
Yeah.
since we did this. So let's start with prayer.
Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Amen.
Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tuae, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Amen.
In Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
Welcome to Catholic Guardians. An unapology.
We're out of touch.
Welcome to Catholic Guardians, an unapologetically masculine podcast for Catholic men.
By Catholic men.
Together, choo-choo.
Returning to that tradition station.
Return to tradition. Yeah, I didn't forget about that, which is good. Am I like on? Am I on? I feel like I've got
You could scoot a little closer.
I feel like one of those like old Asian women drivers who like drives with like her chest through the steering wheel.
I was just going to say, don't worry, I won't Teddy McCarrick you. You can scoot just a little closer.
Just a little closer. At least I'm not in seminary. Oh, that was a good
Man. So it's been a minute.
Okay, yeah, so I think it's only fair that we admit to the listeners that this is probably the 7th time we've recorded this podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
I actually do think this is number 7. I think we've done like 5 or 6 before.
Yeah. But they've all just turned out terribly.
Yeah, so we have headphones now. Obviously, as you can see, we're not Princess Leia's. Because we used to just trust these microphones to do their job. And they didn't. So I'm done sounding like an idiot and then trying to like fix it in post. Because I don't have that time. I used to have a lot of time. 7-8 months ago, I had enough time to deal with that. And now it's just... That's part of what we're going to talk about. Like,
yeah, because we're also in a new space.
Yeah, we're in a new space.
Where are we?
Although you couldn't see.
You'll find out.
Because this is still the same.
The same black sheet.
Black sheet. Without any wool. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Should we even say that? The dark. Well, because you can't even say color. The dark sheet. But then dark implies that it's evil. So
yeah,
you're really like you can't say anything. I'm sorry.
Non-privileged sheet.
I'm sorry for everything.
And I feel it's really bad because there's a white sheet behind it. Because, you know, a black sheet is only as good as the white sheet behind it.
Oh, that's bad.
I should probably bleep all of that.
Probably.
Okay, so where have we been?
Because it's been 7 months at this point.
Yes.
That's
November 27th.
November 25th.
25th. So
November 25th.
7 months. So that's today, exactly. Because today is Thursday the 25th.
It is, and tying it all in, it's my son's 7-month. He's 7 months old today. It's not a 7-month birthday because those don't exist.
See, like, okay, so here's the thing. This is always confused about that. Like, because we believe the baby was a baby from minute 1.
Yes.
So why don't we celebrate the
conception day?
Yeah, the conception date.
I don't know. I've asked that question to my wife as well.
Because really, when they pop out, they're almost 1.
They're already 9 months old.
10 months old.
Yeah, 10 months.
Don't tell a woman that they've only been pregnant for 9 months. Because
it's 40 weeks.
It's 40 weeks. 4 times 10. 40. It doesn't help matters that my wife is an accountant and does math.
And does math. Super goods math.
Yeah.
So much math. Wow.
I common core.
Much addition. So I mean, basically what happened is we released the last podcast, which was still it is the number 1 most listened to and downloaded podcast because Catholics want to throw shade. Yeah. Can you judge other people? Are you able to?
Are you able to throw shade?
And the answer is yes. So we released.
There are some that need some shade. Because what is his name? Ryan? The guy from the
Oh, Riley.
Riley's a Riley's.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. So we released that podcast, And at the time, my wife was 10 months pregnant. And we released the podcast. And then later that night, my wife has a contraction and wakes me up. And I say, go grab your phone. We have to start recording these. And then she stands up out of bed and starts laughing because her water broke. And 40 minutes later, we're pulled over on the side of the road on our way to the hospital. And I am delivering my son.
Less than a mile from home, right?
Less than a mile from home, in my sweatshirt in 30-degree weather at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, because I remember that night. This is the funniest thing, because I think my wife got me up, and she like hits me, and she says that you guys had the baby, and you had tagged us with or you had sent to us the message about delivery and hospital time, and Kirsten's like, oh, he got him backwards. I was like, he didn't get it backwards. They didn't have the baby in the hospital. And then, of course, being a guy, my immediate thought was, do you get a refund from the hospital?
I asked, and yes, we did. We got money back because we didn't have a labor room delivery.
You're like, oh, I want some money now.
Yeah, I said it as a joke, and then I ended up getting a check. So I'm pretty happy about that. It was pretty cool.
So really,
it wasn't necessarily a third of the cost, but
the moral of the story is, having babies gets you checks. Especially now in this COVID time where you get all the monies for all of the babies.
Yeah, just ignore the money that we put down first. It was so weird, like putting a down payment on a baby. like on a car or on a house.
This thing is mine.
But yeah,
what
so
happens
that
if you
was.
Don't make a payment. Do they repo the baby?
Yeah, they do.
That's so depressing.
That's not your baby anymore. That's the hospital's baby.
That's the state's baby.
They just put them in the closet of all the other unclaimed babies.
Oh, that's so unfortunate.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
I feel sad now. Yeah, so that was that was quite an experience. It was very interesting. It's a fun story. Now I can tell it every Thanksgiving, and in not this year but next year, his birthday is actually going to fall on Thanksgiving, so I'll be able to stand up after having a couple drinks and recount the entire story.
While your wife like kicks you from under the table.
Constantly. But
which is like a normal dinner.
Part of everyday life.
Yeah, it's like everyday life. She's kicking you all the time. Which is like, I feel like that's what a wife's job is to like really like hit
just to make sure that you toe the line and you just keep you from going off the rails as far as you can.
Which is important because you're supposed to go off the rails because that's your job. You're a guy.
Yeah. So yeah, I delivered my son. My wife gave birth to him in the front seat of my truck on the side of the road at about 11 o'clock at night. And then I'm on the phone with 911 afterwards, screaming at the dispatcher because he asked a stupid question. And then they transferred me over to somebody who started asking smart questions.
Who had not stupid questions.
Not stupid questions. Like instead of, well, how far down the street are you? I just gave you the address because I'm literally parked in somebody's front yard.
Dude's front yard.
The next dispatcher, what color, make, and model is your truck? That's a great question. Are you on east or west? I am on east. Thank you for asking smart questions. I am panicking up the hell right now.
If you go down the road, I'm the only guy with a baby.
Only person on the side of the road in a blue truck with a baby. So we were in, like, thank God, everything ended up working out. We actually didn't think he was going to make it because he was born, he was bright blue, he wasn't responsive, he wasn't crying, he wasn't breathing. So I handed him to my wife, and I'm just like covered in everything. And this is the one like really fail moment that I had. I look at her and I say, you need to call 911. And she's holding my newborn son, trying to make sure the umbilical cord isn't wrapped around his neck and trying to get him to breathe. And then she just goes, I don't have a phone. That's right, I have the phone. I got this. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. But it was so crazy because we're pulling out of the house and she is screaming. And I'm, like, in retrospect, it's because she's always had an epidural. Her labors, the longest one was 12 hours, but we've always gotten to the hospital. She's had the epidural. And then looking back on it, I'm like, oh, you actually had, like, real full-blown labor pains. We've never had that before. But in between one of the contractions... until the Passion.
Yeah.
But in between one of the contractions, she just very calmly looked over at me and said, "You need to pull over because I'm having this baby right now." And in my mind, I'm saying, "The you're having this baby right now." So I
Where's my truck?
So I pull over, get out of the car, run around, and oh my God, yeah, there's his head right there. So ambulance gets on scene along with 6 other sheriffs and a fire department or a fire truck, and the entire department. It felt like it because there were like 20 people on the street, all shining flashlights on my wife.
And what else is there?
And she is a very modest woman, and that is probably one of the things that is going to continue to haunt her for the rest of her life. So two EMTs are on the scene, and they get my wife in the ambulance. They get my boy hooked up to oxygen, and they come up to me and they say, "Everybody's going to be fine. We're doing great. We're going to take it nice and slow to the hospital. So just follow us. We're not going to turn the sirens on. Just follow us, and we'll get you there." So we start driving. I call my mother-in-law because so my wife's water broke, and then we had to wait for my mother-in-law to come to the house to watch our other 3 kids, which only took about 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then it took another 10 minutes for us to get her out the door because she was in full-blown labor pains. And then 2 minutes later, I'm having my son on the side of the road. But we timed it, and even if everything had gone perfectly, she still would have had the baby on the hospital room floor. Like right as we walked into the ER, boom, baby, right there for everybody. But so I call my mother-in-law just to let her know, "Hey, everybody's fine, but your daughter and your newborn grandson are in the back of an ambulance right now driving to the hospital." And so she's freaking out, and she's like, "Well, what happened?" "Well, I just delivered my baby on the side of the road." And she asked, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am very serious." And then she was like, "Well, how are you doing? How are you feeling?" And I just paused and I went, "I'm actually going to go because I don't want to talk about emotions right now." This is something that happened, and I'm just going to go. Just going to sit in my thoughts. So I'm only wearing a t-shirt. It's a cold November night. And apparently I had slammed my car door so hard as I was running around that I broke the motor. And so my window was stuck in the down position. So I'm driving behind the ambulance, and I'm praying just that everything's going to be okay. We get to the freeway on-ramp, and then the ambulance turns the sirens on and then peels out. And I lose it at this point, and I start crying. Because I'm like, they said they weren't going to do the thing, and now they're doing the thing. So I'm on the freeway following them, like 95. We get to the hospital. I pull into the valet spot. They go into their entrance. I go into the valet, and the guy comes out, and he's like, "Hey, man, can I get your ticket?" And I was like, "Dude, my wife just had a baby in the car. Like, don't touch anything." So he tells me, he's like, "Oh, yeah, go up to floor 2. So I get in the elevator, and I go up. And I pretty much get to the check-in desk right as they wheel my wife in. And at this point, everything's fine. He doesn't, thank God, doesn't have to go to NICU. They did have to put him in one of those plastic bags to warm him up because he was, when they tried to take a blood sample, his feet were so cold that the blood hematized and they couldn't get a good reading off of it. So they took us up into the nursery, and I sat like for 2 to 3 hours with him, and it was just me and him. The nurses left us alone, and it was a really great bonding moment for me and my son, which normally right after birth, baby's immediately given to mom, and mom gets all the attention. They start.
How selfish!
I know, right?
Really? Like, it's like had the baby for 10 months.
10 months. So it was just a really great experience for me. But at that point, my wife and I start loosening up. We start cracking jokes with the nurses and everything, and then we were released less than 36 hours later. Because after they found out everybody's healthy, they're like, "Oh, this is your 4th kid? Okay, yeah, car baby. Yeah, you guys can go home." They referred to us exclusively as car baby and car delivery. So that crazy thing happened. And then, we mentioned it on the podcast before, but then we really started pushing our lives in a different direction of where we were going. So for those who don't know, our mom was diagnosed in the mid-90s with multiple sclerosis. And it was relapsing remitting, but now it's gone effectively full-blown progressive. And we realized that...
Not like politically progressive.
Not politically progressive. But we realized that we need to do everything that we can to make the last few years of mom's life as comfortable as possible and to ensure that she is cared for by people who love her instead of her
kids have
and that her kids and grandkids have some good memories with her at the very end.
Yeah.
And, instead of just sticking her in hospice or having somebody that...
Which would be so much more convenient.
But really making sure that we make the most out of this time. So you had the idea of moving out of town, outside of city limits, and on a big plot of land, getting 3 houses on it, and all of us living effectively like that Branch Davidian lifestyle.
Yeah.
That super David Koresh chic.
We could even start a band.
But as we started looking into it, for this area that wasn't realistic. What we were looking for, it was either too far out time wise in order to build it, or it was too costly for a prepackaged deal effectively of what we were looking for. So my wife and I decided, if we do this with effectively my in-laws and you do the same thing with our parents, we can create effectively a bit of a compromise where we're living close enough to each other, still in a very familial unit, and we're still able to accomplish that goal of getting mom the care that she needs.
Yeah. And
that's what we did.
Yeah. So, it was really funny because it started out as like a joke, like an offhand joke. It was always something that my wife and I, it's been our goal from the very beginning. I think, so when we got married, we were okay Catholics. Like, she had just converted. But when we really got into the faith, the first aspect to converting our life into a lifestyle that mirrored the faith that we believe. Excuse me. The first step was get out of town.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that you can live that lifestyle in town.
Cut out so much of that noise.
All of the noise, the plethora that you don't need to kind of get down to like your roots and to kind of like be one with the earth, and not in this hippie way, but to really love all of God's creation in the most authentic way possible.
Yeah, to be a good steward of this creation that God has entrusted to us.
So we wanted to do that for a long time, and it was almost not coincidental, because I don't believe in coincidence, but it was very cool. If I look out the back corner of my property, within 1,000 yards is the front corner of your property.
Yeah.
And so we got exactly what it is that we're looking for. Like, you're a 60-second drive from my house. We're within walking distance. Our wives can they talk all the time. Like, it gave us everything that we needed. And then it gave us the opportunity to kind of have this environment where mom is watched out for, mom's taken care of. Like, we don't have to have a worry. So when up until this point where we all lived where we do, it was a 25-minute at best drive. And I'm talking running every red light and speeding and running stop signs.
Yep.
The entire way. She was at least 25 minutes away from any of us. And I'll go to this weekend. Mom fell, I think, 12 times in about 24 hours.
Yep. It was bad.
And I think about what would happen if she hadn't been living here. How would that have kind of evolved? And it's so clear that it wouldn't have been good. And the decision that we've made, I'm so happy that we made it, because it's so vitally important that we actually do take care of her, right? So really living up to the honor of thy mother and father, part of what we're doing is not really sacrificing, but we're reevaluating the priorities in our life to ensure that she's a priority for our family, like she did for us when we were kids, right? And I think it's a really cool thing that it took 6 months to put together. And I wish it wouldn't have taken 6 months, but now that we're here, I think it's great. Obviously, it happened in the time that God had planned for, but that I think is it's where we are now. You're on your spot, I'm in my spot. We're close. Mom is taken care of. All of our needs are balanced now, right? And I think that's so important, and it makes life so much more simple. Life is not simple. Life is complicated. There's a lot that goes on at this house now. Like, we have wells, we have septics, we've got all of these other things that, before it's like, if the toilet doesn't flush, just plunge it harder, right? Like, I'm so sorry, this thing keeps going on. If the water, son of a bitch, that's my watch. If the water doesn't turn on, like, you call somebody. And now it's kind of like, when something doesn't happen, like, there's extra work that goes into it, which is great, because obviously, like, now it's all on me, which is awesome.
Like, when the swamp cooler wasn't working 2 weeks ago, that was me climbing up on the roof and figuring out exactly what part of the swamp cooler was not working right.
Yeah.
And it was the pump. And a year ago, I wouldn't have even known. And I was able to figure it out, and I fixed it, and now it works great. Even my wife says even better than before. She's obligated to say that, even though we both know it's not true. But it's like, as we have made these changes in our lives, it's also changing the kinds of people that we are.
Yeah.
It's making us more self-sufficient, and it's cutting out so much of that noise that was distracting us. Like, I look back on it now and realize how much time we spent, like, still together as a family, but how much time we spent over the weekends when I wasn't working, like, watching movies and watching TV, because it was just what we did.
Yeah.
And we still hung out, we still would go outside, but the way that our house is set up right now, our couch is not right in front of our TV. The way that it's positioned, the TV is effectively an afterthought in our living room. And so we're spending so much more good quality time together as a family, praying, actually being outside and working the land that we now live on, making sure that it's taken care of, making sure that we're checking the fences for holes so that other animals, as my 7-year-old says, don't get on our property because daddy will shoot them. But it's a simple life, but not, it's still complex, because there's so much more going on, but it's so much more meaningful. There, again, the only way I can really put it is there's just so much less noise.
Yeah.
And that allows us to focus more on making our families really holy. And really, at the end of the day, as fathers, we're called to make sure that we get our wives and our children to the gates of heaven. And this is the best way to do it. Like, when we first started talking about doing this, my wife and I started adding into our prayer life, for a sign or for a roadblock. We basically would pray together, God, this is the direction that we think we should take our lives. We think this is the way that we should move, because it's going to allow us to glorify your name and put you at the center of our lives more fully. If we are on the wrong path, send us a sign or send us a roadblock. So we met with the realtor. He did the tours of our houses, ours and our in-laws, and said, okay, we're going to put your houses on the market in January. Pointing to my in-laws, their house is going to sell much faster because it's in a more desirable area. Yours is going to take probably about 2 months. Our house was put up on a Wednesday, and it had sold by the following Tuesday. And so then we keep asking for more prayers and for more roadblocks. And as everything progressed, it just is not coincidental that the day that my in-laws' house closed is the same day that we closed on our new house. It was just meant to be. This was a closing of an old chapter of our lives, of our family, and moving forward into a new stage where we can all get closer, number one, to God, but number two, grow closer to each other through our faith and through our new shared experience of making this life work.
Yeah, it's I think it's so cool. Like the last podcast that we dropped, I'm gonna have to bleep that name. My wife we found out that we were pregnant probably 3 weeks before we had recorded that episode, because we recorded the episode about a week before Thanksgiving. So
Yep.
I think it's really cool that, like when we didn't want to have our new baby in the old house, right? Like we wanted to just kind of like just start fresh from the ground up with the new baby in the new house with this new life. And tomorrow is the baby's due date. Baby won't be here tomorrow. Unless an act of God happens. But I think it's really special that like we've gotten almost everything done. Like the house isn't exactly in like perfect order, but like that's part of the cool piece of this whole thing is getting the house exactly how we want it versus living in that house and just kind of like accepting what it is. Like the fact that our kitchen, like in my old house, it was so frustrating for my wife because like I'd go to like move in and like slide behind her in between the kitchen sink. Oh, let's see. No, I'm a liar. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. I'd go to like slide between her and the sink or her and the fridge, and it was like there was no space. Like, good luck. It's not going to happen. And that was before she was pregnant, and not because I'm fat or she's fat. It's just because there was no effing space.
It was a small kitchen.
Super small. And now, like, our old kitchen, our old dining room, and our old family room is now as big as our kitchen. And I just like the fact that it's just so... It's set up so well. Like, the house is built in a way that just... It's conducive of the lifestyle that we want to live. Like, we're always hanging out together. Like, everybody's having fun. We have a fairly big sized backyard, and now it's not really. I mean, it was kind of concerning to my wife at the very beginning. Obviously, not so much to me because I'm a guy, but like, where are the babies? Like, where are our 3 other kids? It's like, well, they're probably in the backyard being dirt children. And now it's just like that's where they go. Like, they're not in front of the TV. We have music playing pretty much 24/7 at the house, which I think is really cool. It's a decent compromise. I love music. I think music is great. So we have music going all the time. Music comes from the TV. But the windows are open, the doors are open, and the kids are outside playing. And I just love the fact that the kids are always, always, always outside. Yeah. My kids are always filthy. And it's so cool. Like, they love it. And I love that. And I love the house. And I love being here. I love the fact that it's such an open and warm and inviting environment to bring a child home to. As opposed to our last house, we maxed it out. Like, there was no space for any of our stuff, which was, I mean, part of the reason is because we had a lot of crap. But the other part was just, it was a super tiny house. And, 2 adults and 3 kids and then a dog. It's a lot of stuff, right? And now we've got 4 adults, 3 kids, 1 more almost about to happen, and now we've got 4 dogs. Well, it's really like 2 dogs because Mom has a couple Chihuahuas, and they don't really count as dogs. They're more like mobile rats.
She has 2.5.
2 3/4. Because the dog's missing a leg, right? It's like 2 7/8 or whatever. I can't fraction. But it doesn't feel cramped. And the house isn't so much bigger than the other house. It's designed way better. But it's just like, it's great. It's like, it's open. I love the fact that my kids have this beautiful relationship with my parents now. And like, they're excited to see them. And they're always giving my mom hugs. And it's such a great thing for all of us, right? It gives me and my wife an opportunity to refocus our time on us. And it gives my parents an opportunity to refocus on them. And at the same time, refocus all of our energy on our children and the path that we're leading in life. Like, we have an entire room now dedicated to homeschool. And then we have an entire room dedicated to our prayer life. And I think all of these things are possible because we've been disciplined and ordered around trying to accomplish a goal that was Christ-centered from its very origin, which came to fruition because the center room in this house is the prayer room, right? It's the altar room. I mean, it is smack dab in the middle of everything. In order for you to get from one side of the house to the other, or have any sort of movement, you have to go through the prayer room, which I think is great because it always gives you an opportunity to like slow down and reflect on Christ, because it like you can't miss him.
You're going to see one of the icons.
Like it's the room, but it's really important that it's just so centered and so grounded, and I think that's just so great because life was so chaotic, and now life has been exponentially made more complicated by all of that's happened since March, right? It's just it's nothing has gotten easier, it's only gotten more complicated. But for us, the stress is far less impacting our life than it would have in the old home and our old lifestyle, because we've designed a life that's simple and centered on God and our relationship with him. And I think that's really cool because there were so many distractions in our old life that were easy enough for us to just kind of like shoo Jesus off to the side and get wrapped up in the complications of living a life. And now it's so much more simple. I get to wake up this morning. We woke up and I don't know if it rained last night or if it was just really humid in the air, but
no, it rained a little bit.
Like we walked outside and you have that humid, wet sagebrush smell. And it was like, this is the greatest smell ever. There's no light. I mean, it's more simple, and it's so great that we get to have that, so we can spend time outside drinking coffee, looking at the sunrise, looking at the mountains, hanging out, watching our kids run around and be idiots. It was great. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's been really cool because I want to say the last 6 months of my life have probably been the most stressful 6 months of my entire life, period. So like today I think is 110 days, 115 days that let me just try and pull this thing up. So we were 25, 56, 86, 87, 88, 89. So like 108 days, my business has been shut down.
Yeah.
Right. And before, like, my business was not my whole life, but it was definitely a big focal point in my life. But, since Corona came out, I haven't been able to work. Like, the government came in and shut us down. But I've been able to refocus all of my mentality and all of my energy on my wife and my children. And then how do I move forward and still be a provider for my family? Like, how do I get to do that? And part of it has been planning what we're doing here at Catholic Guardians. The other part has been like, how do I fit in, and just do what I enjoy doing, like I did before, but in a way that makes more money. Because right now there's zero money because obviously you ain't got a job. But like, how do I get to do all those cool things and in a way that teaches my kid resilience, it teaches my kids passion, it teaches my kids ingenuity, all of those things. All of it's led to this. And I mean, if I would have been stuck in that old place, in that old lifestyle, and had this burden, it probably would have crushed me. Mm-hmm. And now it's like I've got all of this opportunity to really refocus all of these things and turn all of these negatives into something that's really positive. Because I don't want my son to come home into a house that's got some depressed, asshole, stressed out dad who's just like ready to just, lose it, right? Now it's like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like losing my job was the coolest thing ever. It gave me the most focus in my life. It gave me the most direction. It gave me all of these really cool opportunities. I hate those poster board sayings. It's like, when God closes one door, he opens another. It's like, well, no, that's not always true. Sometimes doors stay shut, right? But it's like, maybe you're looking in the wrong direction. Like maybe you're not looking for an open door. Like maybe he just shuts the door and like, you're going to have to find something else.
And you have to be humble enough and wise enough and open enough to realize that this is a roadblock and that this is not the direction that God is calling you to be. And that you need to, I mean, again, you just need to be humble enough to accept the fact that you have given God control, and now he is leading you in a certain way that you didn't think that you were going to go, but you have to have the faith that it is all going to be worth it in the end. And so far, it's all been worth it. I mean, even over these last 100 days with this coronavirus, I don't want to say pandemic because
It's not.
It's so heavily politicized. But everything, but everything about it just reinforced our whole idea behind this.
Yeah.
In terms of you and me starting to hunt because we want to be more as self-sufficient as possible. I do not want to be beholden to anybody. And with the sale of my house and with the sale of my in-laws' house, we were able to buy our house outright. And we no longer have a mortgage, and we are so incredibly blessed because that is such a stress point for so many people. How am I going to pay this mortgage? And that is one thing that I don't have to worry about anymore. And the worst thing could happen, I could lose my job, but nobody can come and take my house. They can try, and I'll shoot them. But nobody can come
and take it.
But nobody can come and take my house. But then everything started to fall apart in this world, and it just reinforced that what we were doing and the path that we were on is the correct path. Don't put your trust in secular and worldly authorities. Put your trust in God and put your trust in the supernatural, because that's the one thing that you and I have talked about. It's one of the saddest things. You really see now how much we have lost our supernatural faith.
Yeah, how little supernatural faith our church has.
Exactly, as a congregation and as a church. I mean, my heart broke every Sunday when I could not go to Mass because Mass just became a television program. And then everything starts opening back up, but the dispensation is still there. Well, you can still stay there. And I cannot reconcile the fact, if I truly believe, which I do, that the Eucharist is the true presence of Christ, and that every Sunday I witness a miracle. I witness a supernatural miracle in the transubstantiation of bread and wine to the body and blood of my Lord and Savior. Why the hell would I ever settle to watch that on a television screen?
Yeah.
Why would I not beat down the door to see that live in person?
I mean, it really is. It's so... I think it makes me sad that as things reopen, that we've been...
Phase 3 is on hold right now.
Yeah, Phase 3 is on hold. Indefinitely. But the moratorium on evictions is not.
It's on hold until you wear your muzzle.
But really, so my wife has this, she picked it up on a podcast. I can't remember what it was, but if it'll bring you grace, God will allow it, kind of a thing, right? Which I mean, whether or not I believe in that or not. But I think it's really cool because the way that we looked at this whole thing, because this house was the last one that we looked at, and we had looked at like 6 or 7 other houses before this one. Everything, there was just obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after like there was just so many issues with everything going on. And then when we got to this one, it was kind of like, well, this is the last one. If this works out, great. If not, what we want to do isn't going to happen here. And we'd have to look at out of state, or there was going to be a lot of things that kind of went into it. And then it kind of all came together. And my wife and I were laughing, when we finally moved in, it was just kind of like, well, obviously it's going to bring us grace. So that's the outlook that we've got now, is because whether God allowed it or because it worked out, now we get to look at everything that's happening as a way to bring us more grace, even when it's difficult, even when it's upsetting and frustrating and difficult and stressful. All of those things are going to bring us grace because it was so difficult to get here and so unique for us to be able to get to this spot that it clearly has to. And that's the great thing, because now everything that we do just has grace in it. And it, you know, it's just great. Like we live, excuse me, we live like 5 minutes from church.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
So cool.
And then we had 210 people at Mass when other churches are experiencing like 10 people. Because that's all 15.
that's all that are pre-registering and buying their tickets.
That even want to come back, right? And now, and our priest got up, and God bless this man, who had like a reversion to our faith, right? Like he was not so hot, and now he's like he's changed how he views us as traditionalists, right?
And the
Latin Mass and the beauty of the extraordinary form and the beauty and tradition. And so like he gets up, and I cringed when people clapped in the homily. But he gets up and he looks at everybody and he goes, I think it's about time for a church, like a real church, because you're a real parish. And everybody's like, yeah. It's like, left in church.
We know.
But like
we may be outside, but we still don't clap.
Yeah, because we're in the parking lot right now to participate, right? Because you get your participation trophy. But like we're a legitimate parish now, like size-wise. And devotion, it's very clear of all of the other parishes around us. We've got the best numbers, not because, the location's great. The location is inconvenient for almost anybody.
Unless you live down here.
Unless you live down here. And there's not a lot of people that do. But it's our devotion to the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. And I think what's really, really cool is as we move here as a family, and you moved there, and as we grow together as a family, the opportunities that parish is going to hold for our families, as there's a chance that we get, so there's like a plot of land next to the church that's for sale, so they're talking about buying that and then giving it to the church and then building like a real church. And then like maybe the priest becomes like a full-time pastor and not just an associate pastor. Like if we have a full-time priest, then we'll get a daily mass, and we can get daily mass in the extraordinary form. Like all of these things that are now like right at the tips of our fingers, and we're ready to grasp them. I think it's so beautiful. And I think that leads us to like, where are we going? So like we've been gone because life kicked us in the crotch, and we didn't want to drop the ball on our family because family's the priority.
And then we were quarantined
and you and I couldn't get together, and there was a lot going on, and you had your thing and I had my thing. So like now that we're back together, like Catholic Guardians is not just, it was never just a pet project. It was never just a hobby for us. It was always meant to be something more. And now that we've got the time and the ability where we're not 45 minutes away from each other anymore, like the fact that we're 2 minutes away, it gives us an opportunity to really kind of devote more time together, because this podcast is great. The podcast is great because both of us together, and we play really well because, we're not brothers. We just have the same parents. But like, where are we going to take this podcast? And then this movement, right? This bringing men back to this masculine, authentic traditionalism that the church offers, but so many men don't even know about, right? And I think that's where we kind of come in. And we've done a bunch of episodes, and I think, and we talked about this, is this page is not a catechesis page. Like, we're not here to teach the canon. We're not here to teach the catechism. We're not here to teach you about First Communion, reconciliation, about any of the sacraments. We will, just because we're good Catholics and we're smart and we know what we're talking about. But we're going to talk about Catholic stuff. Like things that we love about the church, things that nobody's heard about in the church. So for instance, and this is my biggest pet peeve. Do you know, so the Shroud of Turin, the Shroud of Veronica, not the Tolma, but there's like a mantilla that's associated with Christ. And then all of the Eucharistic miracles. Do you know what blood type they all test as?
It's the universal receiver.
Yes, AB negative.
AB negative, yeah.
Right? Everybody thinks it's the universal donor, but it's not. O is. AB is the universal recipient. And I've always joked with people, and not in like a joking, but in like a really kind of like unique, like, hey, how cool is that? Universal recipient, the blood type of Jesus Christ, is the universal recipient of all blood, right? Because Christ in his very genome was designed to take in from everybody, right? Like, that's the coolest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way that you can falsify that, because like scumbag who falsified this and scumbag, like there's so many miracles and so many different pieces of evidence over such a long distance in time before people even knew what blood types were. There's no way to fabricate that.
Yeah.
Right. There's just, it's what is that called? Occam's razor. No, not Occam's razor, but when you exclude all things that are impossible, whatever you're left with, however improbable, must be the truth, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever that is. Like, obviously, all things considered, it would be impossible for all of these men to have coordinated this together or fact-checked and referenced each other in their pranks for these miracles. So the improbable is that that's actually what it is, and so it must be true, right? And so like we like things like that, like the Shroud of Turin. I love the Shroud of Turin. I've loved it for like a decade, right? I'm super nerdy about stuff like that. We did a big thing on the Rosary because we both love the Rosary and the history behind it. But there's so many different aspects to our faith that people just don't really get an opportunity to learn about because nobody talks about it, right?
And there are so many times where if you're reading about the lives of the saints, or if you're reading about the history of the church, or even if you're reading scripture and you make that connection to the church as a whole, where you just have a moment of, oh, this is cool. This is so cool.
It gives you a really cool personal, not invitation, but like a personal pull to the faith. Like, you get to be a part of it in a unique way because you have this quirky piece of you that's exposed in this, prophecy, or in this, miracle, or in this saint, or in this whatever, right? Like, everybody has a little piece of the church that they really can call theirs, right? And not like they have ownership in it, but it's like that's what makes them them. And the church has that. And the sad thing is, when you look at like what the church educational system is designed to do, is to produce the lowest common denominator of educated Catholics to get them the sacrament, so the bishops can say they've got this many Catholics in their parish, and then move on to the next year.
I mean, it mirrors very much public education. We are doing the bare minimum in order to have the accredited test taken so that we get the funding that we need so that we can stay in business for another year.
And so like you don't get that opportunity. And so like when I taught confirmation over at the other parish, one of the other instructors like, we really need to teach them the Rosary. It's like, what? Like, I'd love to be able to teach them the Rosary, but that's 15 minutes of prayer. Like, we can't even get these guys to like do anything. So like that's a little bit too far down the road for these guys spiritually, which is pathetic. But what we get to do on this podcast is we get to go long, deep, and really invest time into researching and talking about these different things that we're super passionate about. And I think that's going to be so beneficial for so many different people, because a lot of the times what people want to know is they just want to know the facts. They want to, it's like, wow, I just need to know this. Like, but there's so much more that you're missing out on, that if you just spend a little bit of time learning, and in a fun way, not in this like, this is a 6-hour lecture, part 1. There's a guy named Jesus.
It's absolutely incredible. But Jordan Peterson's whole series on Genesis, it is a beast to sit through and listen. It's incredible material, but it's 20 hours.
Yeah. And a lot of it might be whether people don't have the time or people don't have the interest, but it's like these little short snippets of episodes are really going to be able to give us an opportunity to, one, talk about our church, right? The beauty of our church, like the coolest stuff about it. some of the things that maybe a lot of people don't know. We'll be able to defeat a lot of rumor and a lot of false narratives that have been spoken about the church. I mean, we talked about this before, but the false narrative that the church was persecuting Jews in World War II. We're going to talk about that in an entire episode of like how there was this one guy who was a bishop who ended up becoming, I don't know, this thing called the Pope, and he was falsifying baptismal records for Jews so that they could come off as Catholics so they didn't get exterminated. That's what our Pope did. Our Pope was falsifying baptismal records so that Jews didn't die. If that's not the opposite of what people have been claiming about our church, then I don't know what is. But like we get to dive into that for an hour or an hour and a half, like whatever it is. Like we really get to go into these things. And then on top of that, we get to relate it to men. And what does that mean? How does that relate to being a man now? Because there are so many issues that we're going through right now as a church that really call specifically to men to help fix, you know, in the wise words of Bishop Barron, it's up to the lady. That's their job. And I mean, I say that a little bit callously because I'm a little bit frustrated with what he said, but he's right? Like it is up to the lady. But if you have an unarmed, uneducated, and limp-wristed lady, like what are you going to do? Use harsh words and a mean look to stop things? Like no, like you're going to need men of action, formed and structured in a solid foundation of their faith in order to accomplish that. And I'm looking forward to playing a part in that, however small that part might be.
Yeah, and I'm just looking forward to sharing my love of the church and the freaking cool things that go along with it. And again, like when you make these little connections, like I was in the shower the other day, and I made the connection, and it just brought a whole new appreciation for me on the church's pro-life message. And I was thinking about, the Mormons, and they believe in the pre-existence of the soul. And it finally clicked. The truth of the Catholic Church's teaching, souls do not pre-exist, because then why is it so important to save the life in that womb? Because if it's just a pre-existing soul, you can kill the shell, and then that soul can just go inhabit another body. And you have just this endless conveyor belt of souls. But that's not what the church teaches. No, the church teaches that life is so unique and precious and sacred because it will only house this soul that was created specifically for this body.
Yeah.
Specifically for this body. And if you destroy that body, then you rob that soul the chance to live, the chance to know God as we walk through this suffering journey of life. But then you also rob the world of knowing that soul and the joy that it can bring. And I wish I wasn't in the shower when I realized when I made that connection, but I was like,
out screaming about it. I was like, get drunk.
How freaking cool is that the church knows this, and the church set these teachings in place and set this doctrine for some stupid 31-year-old in the shower to go, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. Yeah. Like the church is so cool.
Yeah, and I think it's really, again, I think there's so much about it that people just don't know, right?
No, and what they have heard is by people whose agendas are to destroy the Catholic Church or disgruntled Catholics who don't know their faith.
Exactly.
And the reason that they're disgruntled is because they don't know their faith.
Because they don't know their faith. Or they have devious motivations, which is the other thing that we're really going to get into in this next episode, is really what's kind of going on, like the state of the church, right? And how do we come through that? So, but I think that's a really good place to end now that our audio is not all up. We can actually post this episode because I am not recording this one again.
That would be number 8.
Yeah, I don't want to do an 8.
Yeah.
It's not lucky number 8, is it?
No.
7. 7's a good number in the Bible, right?
Yeah. 7 wicker baskets.
7 sacraments.
Yeah.
7 times 7 times 7, which is
7 gifts of the Holy Spirit.
It's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot. All right.
Ended in prayer.
All right, in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Which prayer? Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, vita dulcedo et spes nostra salve. Ad te clamamus, exulis filii Eve, ad te suspiramus, gementes et flentes in hac lacrimarum vale. Ea ergo advocata nostra illos tuos misericordes oculos ad nos converte, et Iesum benedictum fructum ventris tui, nobis post hoc exilium ostende. O clemens, O pia, O dulcis Virgo Maria, ora pro nobis, sancta Dei genitrix, ut dini efficiamur permissionibus Christi. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen.
All right.
Do the plugs.
Plugs.
Catholic. Oh, man. This is so clunky. After you.
It's like a first high school dance. So they can find us on the website, www.catholicguardians.com. There's a link to everything that we do. So our Etsy store, which is etsy.com/shop/Catholic Guardians. You can pick up all of our really cool rosaries. We got a bunch of chaplets. We got a whole host of rosaries. We have a ton of really cool ones. New ones are coming out like every other week. New designs, new devotions, new, whatchamacallits, some places and some things. We have a brand new t-shirt.
It's pretty cool.
Bullets, beads, and beatitudes.
My wife said it reminded me of Bears Beats.
Battlestar
Galactica.
I came to it because it's like back in the Marine Corps, we used to talk about beans, bullets, and bad guys, right? Like the three things you need to have knowledge of, like when you're crossing the wire. And I was like, beads, bullets, bad guys. I was like, beads, bullets, beatitudes. Oh. And so then we've got this really cool new logo design. We have a new t-shirt that's come out. I mean, we got a whole, and in the t-shirt, the new logo has a whole, it's not a new logo, it's a design. It's a design of our channel. It's got so many different cool swags to it. It's pretty legit. It's too legit to quit.
You can listen to us on any podcast platform. Not any, but a lot of them. You can listen to us on Apple iTunes podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and Pandora.
And
if you can, leave us a 5-star review and a written review, because the more reviews we get, the more 5-star reviews we get, the higher we appear in the charts. info@catholicguardians.com is the email. Catholic_Guardians is the Instagram. Catholic Space Guardians. Not Space Guardians like Space Force, but Catholic and then the Space Guardians is the YouTube and the Facebook.
The Facebook page. Send us a like. Send us a comment, a question. If there's now I don't think we'll be taking submissions, but if there's something that I think people really want to hear about, email us. We'd love to talk about it, right? Because a lot of this is a learning experience for us, because we get to share and grow in the faith as we learn about cool things, and maybe we talk about things that we have a good knowledge of, and then other times we don't.
Yep.
And I think that's really cool about this. So if there's something that people are just dying to hear about, some of the episodes will be in line with what a lot of other channels are talking about, because it's so common. We'll be doing an episode coming up about Trump and the election. We'll be doing one about the current state of the church, the attacks against the church. We'll be doing episodes that are kind of brainers, you'd have to talk about this, or you'd have to be an idiot not to. But send us a submission if there's something that really you want to talk about, or you want us to talk about. We'd love to, and we might do it. Oh man, we might do it, we might not. But I mean, the worst that we'd say back to you is, "You're an idiot." I think that's about the worst that we'd say to somebody, unless you're a feminist, and then I'd probably call you a feminist. I called that one lady a feminist when she acted like a feminist. I was like, well, you're a feminist. I can't believe that. It's like, your actions say that. So info@catholicguardians.com. CatholicGuardians.com is the website. Shop, Etsy.com/shop/CatholicGuardians.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit subscribe. Click subscribe. Hit the bell.
Hit the bell for notifications. We'll be doing a live stream here soon. We've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up.
Yep.
Whole bunch of stuff. So I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right.
God bless.
Have a good night.